Welcome to week 131 of Misha and Dianne Watch Santa Barbara.
Hello.
The world's only long-form Santa Barbara documentary, after-show, podcast. What else? Fanfic?
Could be skit comedy sometimes in your case.
Yeah. What? Me? It is Monday, January 6th, 1987, in the days of yore. And we watched episode 634 of Santa Barbara. Haley and Ted ask Jake for the afternoon off so that he can worry about Kelly. I guess that's sort of action, worrying about Kelly that needs a whole day off. You'd think he'd just want to be lifting bales of hay to take his mind off it.
Mm-hmm.
Jake overhears them plotting to make Jake like Ted by having Ted ask him out for a beer. Jake reveals himself and says, "I can do with a beer as long as you're paying." Then Ted tells Jake all about his sister's problems. He doesn't say what they are. Of course, he thinks they're rich people problems. Jake tells Ted about being beaten by his father while growing up in a trailer park in the South Side. Now, I don't know if I think we talked about this before. Is there a South Side of Santa Barbara, or is this the South Side of LA, or?
Yeah, it's hard to tell. As we've mentioned before, Santa Barbara isn't really that big, and it is, I would say, probably a fairly upper income place, especially parts of it. So
that's the feeling I always got when we went, in the last 20 years. But I don't know, maybe the mid-'80s were a grimmer place. Anyway, he gives Ted the afternoon off so that he can hang around the Capwell mansion, which is what he does. Sophia runs into him and says that Kelly and Jeffrey were spotted in Zurich a couple of hours ago. So Ted decides that he should go to Zurich to look for Kelly, which is already annoying Cece and Sophia because too many people want to go to Zurich to look for Kelly. Later at that bar, Jake is drunk, and he starts to get testy about Ted, trying to pretend that they're equals. Then he gets upset when Ted implies he's a drunk. So Ted leaves, saying he can't talk to someone in that state, and Haley is left to realize that unless she drives him home, Jake will try to drive drunk. So Ted later is annoyed that she gave Jake a private chauffeuring, but realizes that, of course, it was her only choice.
yeah, I guess I would only wonder. I mean, it seems to have worked out fine, but a angry drunk is not necessarily, from a personal safety standpoint, someone you want to be trapped in a car with. But like I say, it seems to have worked out.
Seems like he's inherited some traits from his father. Now, this is that bar with the red counter that I'm not sure if it's Johnny's from a close-up angle or a different bar, because the bar with the red counter that has the blonde bartender and is the one that Gus originally walked into to overhear, that radio report, and the one a couple of days ago that people were having a drink in. But they only ever just show really close up to this red-topped bar. So next time we see Johnny's, I'm really going to try to get a look at the bar and see if that's just actually the same place, but from a closer angle that only shows the bar part of it. So anyway, and I don't think it's, and the bar's on the wrong side to be that New Year's Eve club. So. And
it wouldn't be, don't they sometimes, I've always assumed some of the bar scenes were at the Orient Express. But.
Well, as we know from when they had the courthouse built, they were showing a lot of scenes of the bar area and at a weird angle. But I can't imagine Gus wandering into the Orient Express on the 8th floor of a Capwell hotel that day that he overheard that there was a hostage taking. So it must be some other bar. So it's either Johnny's or a third location.
Or, as we mentioned before, I think the State Street Bistro or one of those places had a
But that bar
too.
was on the right, and this bar's on the left. So, Eden and Pearl fight with Cece and Sophia over which one of them should go to Zurich to look for Kelly. Cece definitely wants Cruz to go, even if Eden ends up going on her own. Pearl and Eden decide to go together. Pearl had told Cece he's fluent in German, and then later tells Eden he doesn't remember any German. Eden said she thinks she could ask where the bathroom was. So we got two bumbling detectives on their way to Zurich. Cruz is meeting with the commissioner at the Orient Express to discuss signing his reinstatement papers. Pearl sends Eden over to ask Cruz for help, but she ends up just telling the commissioner how happy everyone is to have Cruz back on the force. And she returns to Pearl and says, I couldn't ask him. It's the first time in a long time I've seen him look happy. So she and Pearl are looking at a map book of Zurich, plotting out how they're going to find Kelly, when Cruz sidles up and says, well, Eden, I knew you were trying to ask me something earlier, but changed your mind. Is this about Kelly? And Pearl says, yes, it's about Kelly. She's in trouble. Bad. We need your help. Pearl tells Cruz about the whole plan and how it got messed up. Cruz says that they're in danger of being named as accessories, and Cruz says they're going to need some help. But Eden does not want him to help. She tells him to go and sign those papers, and as soon as he's gone, she and Pearl go to the airport on their own. But Cruz finds out from Sophia that Eden's gone to the airport, and he races over there to find Eden asleep on Pearl's shoulders, and he swaps places with Pearl, and Eden wakes up groggily and says, oh, you came, and he says, yeah, everything's going to be okay. So now we got a group of 3 heading to Zurich to rescue, I guess, Kelly and Jeffrey. But what's happening in Zurich? Oh, that's right. A police officer had just placed Miss Capwell under arrest. Jeffrey wrestles with the police officer as he's being handcuffed, and Kelly bashes him over the head with a 2x4, which, as we know from Mannix, is completely safe, but from reality could kill him. So, that may be her worst crime of all the crimes that can't really be hand-waved away. Mm-hmm. They return to the church to plot their next move. And Jeffrey asks again what she's wanted for. She says she's surprised he didn't hear about it while living in Santa Barbara. Kelly suspects that Jeffrey wants to go to the police, so she fakes a stomach ache. And when Jeffrey leaves, she gets up, looks out the door and says, goodbye, Jeffrey. And then the next time we see her, she's writing a long note to Jeffrey. Which is why, when Jeffrey bursts into the church, she's still there. And he holds up a newspaper with a headline that says, American Murderess in Zurich. He thinks that the guys at Otto's apartment were probably Interpol, but then realizes they didn't show badges, and Kelly's pretty adamant that they were not cops. And then Jeffrey worries about being an accomplice. She says he can show the police the note that she wrote him, which indicates that he didn't know anything about what was going on. But he refuses to leave or let her leave. He says, your father would never forgive me. Kelly says, well, this is probably not in your chauffeur contract. Mm-hmm. And then realize, after having spent the day with Jeffrey, that he's a little too smart to just be taking a chauffeur job. So then she starts to suspect that he took that job to get close to Cece. And then she tells him it wasn't murder, it was self-defense. Kelly has an idea. Let's dress up in these nun and priest clothes we found behind the altar. Good idea, says Jeffrey. He doesn't say it in that accent. He says it in his South African accent, probably. Why didn't I think of that? And Kelly says, we dangerous criminals have to live by our wits. They successfully walk past some police officers in their new disguises and make it to a shipping room in the Zurich airport. I didn't have a chance to Google how far of a walk Zurich airport is from random place in town in the winter. Jeffrey says they just need to steal someone else's boarding pass and walk onto a plane. Now, to New York. Now, I know that, you didn't really need to give your right name or anything in the olden days to get on a plane. International flight, I'm still pretty sure they checked your passports because, the airline's on the hook for sending you back if you get to New York and they don't let you in. And also, wouldn't the people whose boarding pass they stole be standing at the gate going, hey, our boarding pass thing is stolen? I mean, it sounds like he was saying there'd be a stack of them behind the counter. Like maybe they didn't put your name on them back in those days. And they would just hand you a seat at random because they didn't do seat assignments in those days. I can't remember. It was only 40 years ago, but it's possible.
I'm trying to imagine it now where, they'd be in a long line taking off their shoes and putting their liquids in little containers.
Here they are showing at the last minute with a false name and grabbing a boarding pass off the stack as they walk on the plane. Just then, the intercom announces that 2 American fugitives have been spotted in the airport dressed as a nun and a priest. So, Kelly finds 2 blue baggage handler suits, and Jeffrey puts his on and leaves to steal some boarding passes while Kelly changes. But it takes her unexpectedly long to get the headgear off, and he walks in on her naked. As we know from soap tropes, this is one of the many wacky things that happens to new couples, so I feel like it's already obvious Jeffrey and Kelly are being written as a potential couple by the writers.
Yeah, I think, depending on how long this plot goes, it could be by the time Eden and Cruz and Pearl find them, they might be married.
That's true. Otto did say she'd be walking down the aisle with Prince Charming very soon.
Mm-hmm.
He was unable to get any boarding passes, as it turns out, but Kelly has already come up with another idea because there are these 2 huge, I would say at least 3x3, 4x4, maybe even by 4, packing crates bound for New York, which is the country they want to go to. So she's already unpacked the stuff from them and thrown them somewhere else, hidden them in that room, and says they can get inside and get shipped to New York. And Jeffrey says he's claustrophobic. And she says it's either 15 hours in a box or 15 years in a cell. Next, after the next commercial break, he's in a box. No, she helps him into a crate, and once inside, he asks, "This killing, who was it? A burglar?" And Kelly says, "A man. Someone I started to fall in love with. Things changed."
I was wondering when I was watching this if it would really be 15 years for him.
Yeah.
I mean, he hasn't really done that much.
Up until he disguised himself as a priest, he could have just said, "No, I was told to pick up Kelly. I didn't know anything about this. I just moved to Santa Barbara 3 days ago, and I was in a coma most of the time." So anyway, I wanted to talk about Strong Kelly, not just Action Jackson Kelly that we've seen, but also she came up with the priest and nun idea, the boiler suits she found. She emptied the crates. This is a far cry from the Kelly we've seen for 2.5 years. First she was, all in a fluster when Joe got out of prison. Then she was stalked by a serial killer. Then her husband got murdered by the serial killer. Then she had her mind wiped by Dr. Renfro. Then she kind of fell in love with Nick while she had her amnesia. But then as she came out of it, I think she was all confused, and then she slept with Dylan, and that made her more confused. Then she killed Dylan, and then she went catatonic. We've seen her in various states of... plus there was at one point when she was just staring off into space thinking about a doll from the olden days.
Exactly, and we actually had a lot of commentary from Sophia around that time, how Kelly herself was like a delicate little doll.
I wonder if both the writers and Robin Wright said, "I don't want any more scenes where I'm staring off into space with a sad look on my face."
Yeah, I wondered if part of Robin Wright's return maybe included a little more say over how her character was written. I don't know if these scenes would have been shot after The Princess Bride had been released, and of course was quite a hit movie.
I don't think so. I think it would have been... it's January. The Princess Bride was released September 25th, 1987, and we're in January 87, so it's going to be another 9 months before people see it.
So that alone wouldn't have given her the clout, but I imagine when she was negotiating that little break from the program, maybe maybe some other things came into play in those negotiations too.
I think the writers realized that they were wasting one of their most interesting actors and characters. So, we will see if Strong Kelly and trepidatious Jeffrey make it to New York in those shipping crates, while Pearl and Eden and Cruz are on their way to Zurich. So they're going to be wandering around looking for Kelly and Jeffrey, while Kelly and Jeffrey are possibly accidentally redirected to Singapore or something.
And maybe learn about them, basically felling a police officer.
What if those crates actually end up getting routed to a ship or something, and they're stuck in the hold of a ship, scrounging for scraps for like 30 days as it crosses the Atlantic?
Plus, I don't know. I mean, I guess is that where they transport pets in the cargo hold? I wouldn't think it would be very warm or comfortable in that part of an airplane.
Yeah, well, Jeffrey said, they'd suffocate or something. She said, they ship animals. We won't suffocate. But, those are not animal crates. But still, I guess he's worried about the hold having no air. You do kind of wonder if that's part of it is pressurized too. Like, it must be, because, they can control the oxygen flow in the cabin. Presumably it could go down very low when they're at 30,000 feet. So, yeah, that must be pressurized and have air too. We figured it out. That's it for the Monday episode. Wow, a lot of excitement there.
And we should mention we had a CC sighting.
That's right. Just after last week's Kojak with Augusta and Cruz's dad, this week's Kojak had Jed Allen in it, CC Capwell. He had a, spoiler alert, fairly short number of scenes before his character was killed. So, and I think that's it for sightings we've had since we recorded the last one. So we will be back after we watched episode 635 of Santa Barbara. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
Julia. Oh, I have it all here, Mason. I have all the phone calls, all the you and Kelly could have the first brother-sister cell in prison history.
Welcome to episode 635 of Misha and Dianne Watch Santa Barbara. You may be wondering, where's Misha today, and why is George Clooney filling in for him? It's me! I have a beard today, and I look exactly like George Clooney. Episode 635 of Santa Barbara originally aired on Tuesday, January 27th, 1987. And we just watched that episode of Harry O that aired this week on MeTV, and Judith O'Connell was on it. Mm-hmm. Back in 1987, Mason was telling Julia that he is drafting Gus's release papers. I'm worried with this switch to Keith that something could go wrong there. Julia tells Mason that no one wants Keith as the DA. Keith arrives and wonders if Mason plans to have him kidnapped. Keith says, you and Kelly can have the first brother-sister cell in prison history. He offers to help Mason write his resignation letter. Julia follows Keith and swaps briefcases with them in hopes of getting the audio tape of Mason's incriminating phone call. But inside there is only a tape of a movie, and Keith laughs because he figured they would try something like that.
So now we have our protagonist trying to get a hold of two tapes, a videotape, not audio tape.
That's true. Mason tells him not to get too comfortable in that chair. It has a way of changing owners without warning. Well, I like to see that round robin in the DA's chair. Gina tells Cece he needs to give her a cash advance because a cab driver just kicked her out on the curb because she had no money. And also a regular allowance now that the value of Kelly's tape has probably tripled in the value with her and Jeffrey on the run. Cece wonders why Mason has had the place surrounded by police, and Gina says, oh, it's probably our new DA, Keith Timmons. Cece tries to bribe Gina with promises of an allowance if she'll tell him what Keith has on Mason, but she declines. Eden, Cruz, and Pearl arrive at Kelly's apartment in Zurich and talk to Otto about Kelly's potential whereabouts. They find Jeffrey's passport in the church, and the pastor's wife tells them that Kelly and Jeffrey escaped the police. Interpol arrives, and Cruz tries to bluff them with his old police card, but they don't buy it. He says, "Oh, well, I'm undercover right now. You should talk to my handler, Klaus Weber." And when they leave, I thought, oh, maybe this is, some guy that he knew back when he was a spy. But Cruz reveals to Pearl and Eden that Klaus Weber is the real name of Buzz, of Buzz's Christmas tree lot, who is retired to Europe. So they may actually be contacting Buzz. We'll see what he says to them. Jeffrey complains about his claustrophobia as Kelly and Jeffrey exit their crates in New York. So they've finished the first leg of their journey. Kelly makes a brief phone call on a payphone to Cece, but Jeffrey cuts her off when two police officers appear. But they do manage to say they're on their way back to California. Kelly's hair falls out from under her hat, and the two police officers spot it and chase them through the airport. But they make it back to the shipping room, where two sarcophagi are brought in. Now, I suspect these sarcophagi have been used on the show before. I suspect the one Minx survived the earthquake in is one of them, and that the one Sam arrived in Santa Barbara could be the other one.
Yes, good point.
Someone who wants to check those can do that and post in the comments. Kelly now has to talk Jeffrey into traveling in a coffin. Later, exiting their coffins, they find themselves on a train car. And Kelly says, 3,000 miles to go. And as the train starts, it lurches and Kelly falls into Jeffrey's arms. Uh-oh. I think we were right. Jeffrey looks a little bit like the original Joe Perkins, face and hair-wise, I think, compared to the other potential suitors Kelly's had, and fake Joe. Cece admonishes Mason for screwing everything up. Mason says, "I did my best for Kelly," but Cece says, "Your whole life has been one series of near misses." And so I think this kidnapping plot was really just a storyline to break up Cece and Mason again, from the writer's fault. That's possibly why the whole thing didn't go through.
And Sophia throughout this is trying to get Cece to kind of calm down a little bit, because I think she can see that maybe this is the beginning of a breach between Cece and Mason. Yeah,
this was a really nice scene of Sophia sticking up for Mason, saying Mason would never, intentionally hurt Kelly. She tries for a little while, but then at the end she says, "Well, he's your son, you deal with it." So, but she really did try. I think Mason would have been surprised and maybe pleased to see that, but he was no longer in the room at the time. She says to him, "Our one and only enemy is Gina." Then Cece says he's got an idea to create a cash flow problem for Gina and Keith. He says, "I'm going to feed their greed and watch what happens." So, be interesting to see what that is. I don't recall this. I did recall a couple of the scenes we've had recently with Kelly and Jeffrey in the packing crates and things. So I did actually have cable for this semester at school, and I guess I probably didn't learn my lesson about not skipping classes to watch Santa Barbara, but my grades did go up slightly this year, so maybe I scheduled my classes better around Another World in Santa Barbara. Sophia wants him to put Mason on the case to track down Jeffrey and Kelly based on the public address system they heard in the background of that phone call. I feel like, they're going to be home long before they need to be tracked down. But we'll see. Mason tells Julia that what she said to him after the trial about him was correct, and she's lucky that he let her out of their agreement. She's lucky that he let her out of their agreement. Julia, of course, this whole time is kind of, flustered and trying to somehow say that she actually cares for Mason. But he's very down on himself after that encounter with Cece and losing his job. Julia says that she's very confused and doesn't get much more out before Mason leaves. She finds him later in that red bar, telling the bartender, whose name is Jody, that nobody cares for him, and I don't care for anyone either. And when Julie hears that, she leaves. So, if she spots him with Victoria, though, she might wonder, maybe you do care for someone. Keith asks Gina, where's his victory parade? He says, I had the board of supervisors ready to appoint me dictator for life. Cece finds them in the atrium and is once again upset to find them in his house. And Keith pulls out Kelly's arrest warrant, and Cece grabs him by the collar, and Keith says, do it! I'd like to put your whole family under lock and key. It's so funny that just a week ago he was working as their, attorney, thinking that they were going to keep him on after the tape contract ended. Sophia tells Eden that Kelly is back in the United States. Now, this is interesting, because the call we heard was very short. Kelly said a couple things, but also there was a lot of interference on the line.
Yeah.
So it almost made it sound like Cece and Sophia, whoever was on the phone at the time, didn't actually hear anything Kelly said. So I'm surprised they actually figured out both that they heard she was at either a train station or an airport and that she was already back. So, while Cruz and Eden cuddle by the fire in Kelly's apartment, Otto's apartment, they send Pearl out to buy train tickets to Paris. And he returns, I think I saw this coming, with tickets on the Orient Express. And during their cuddling, of course, they had some reminiscences about their night together on the Orient Express. And I feel like we are going to be treated to another night on the Orient Express. However, I discovered two things about the Orient Express. One, it never had a stop in Zurich. But maybe in the alternate universe of Santa Barbara it does. But B, and this may be problematic, it's only a 4-hour trip from Zurich to Paris. So I see in the episode titles of the next few episodes, they're going to be on the Orient Express for at least 3 episodes. Presumably there'll be a sleeping car involved. And just in your head, imagine all that is happening in 4 hours. And piano furnished by Schaefer and Sons. And this is our last appearance of Otto on the show, which makes sense since they're about to get on a train. And really, there's a lot of people flying all over the place looking for Kelly and Jeffrey, but really it's more in service to their own storylines. Poor Pearl has nothing to really do there. He doesn't yet know that Kelly is probably going to be married to Jeffrey by the time he sees her again. And, of course, who does that leave him with? Courtney, Alice, Jane. Who else is single? Santana, maybe, if Brick ends up not going for her.
Minx,
Julia, theoretically. So, anyway, there's a few options for Pearl. But will he find love? I honestly can't remember. So, we will see when we watch episode 636 of Santa Barbara. We'll see you then.
bye-bye.
What shall we say? My legal incompetence having left a stigma on the district attorney's office, which can only be wiped out by responsible leadership,
I could sum it up in 2 words, Keith.
I quit. For this, he went to community college.
Don't you have a Swiss Army knife or something?
Hey, I've been so busy trying to outrun the Swiss Army that I'm sorry to say I forgot my can opener and corkscrew.
Welcome back.
Hello.
Hey, it's Halloween in the year 2025. We watched episode 636 of Santa Barbara from all the way back to January 28th, 1987, which was a Wednesday. Wednesday, we watched an episode of Canon that had 2 gingers on it, Ginger Grant and Ginger Jones. Tina Louise from the Gilligan's Island, and of course Paula Kelly, who played Ginger Jones on Santa Barbara. And last night we watched The Rookies, and in addition to Eric Lanouville, we had Ty Henderson, who played, of course, Sam on Santa Barbara.
Mm-hmm.
Now on Santa Barbara, Ted asks Jake for the day off, and he gets it. Haley returns and asks Jake for another riding lesson. And she's much less sore now, so it seems from the dialogue they've been having lessons regularly. Ted's wondering where Haley is, because, of course, with his day off, he's just wandering around the mansion. He finds Haley with Jake and is a little annoyed that they're spending time together.
Yeah, especially on his day off.
Mm-hmm. Haley says, "We're not in junior high. This is ridiculous." Now, she has, of course, sworn Jake to secrecy about the writing lessons because she wants to surprise Ted. So that may backfire. So it turns out Kelly and Jeffrey are not in a train, as I had thought. They are in the back of a moving van that is making its way across the country, as it turns out, to Santa Barbara, which is lucky. Kelly unpacks some of the family's furniture to make it a little more homey for their 3-day trip, and she finds some canned goods and a can opener, but unfortunately it's electric.
I just felt like this in real life would have been an incredibly risky thing to do, because moving vans are packed, quite carefully to keep the load balanced and everything. And yeah, I think, they're lucky they don't end up with a bunch of end tables crashing into them or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also, when the truck driver peeks inside to check on the load, he's going to see everything's been moved around.
Mm-hmm.
So. There's also a piano on board, which Jeffrey plays. When she pulls out that electric can opener, she says to Jeffrey, "Don't you have a Swiss Army knife?" And he says, "I've been so busy trying to outrun the Swiss Army." When the truck driver stops for lunch, he goes inside to get a cooler, but turns out they're at a truck stop, and it looks like he goes into a diner. So I don't know what he had in his cooler. Probably something he didn't want to eat. So Jeffrey and Kelly take the opportunity to pop out and look for a power outlet so they can open some of those cans. But instead of retreating to the truck to eat, they hang out at a picnic table near the diner and almost miss their ride back because the trucker chats with let's say a cowboy about something, and then gets ready to lock up the vehicle. So they have to. Kelly distracts him by pretending to find to have found some money near his table, and says, "Oh, I gave it to the waitress." And then when he goes back in to get the money that's not really even his, they sneak back inside. Once underway again, Jeffrey quizzes Kelly about Mason and Pamela. And then Kelly tries to quiz Jeffrey over his real reasons for taking the chauffeur job with Cece. And he ends up saying, "I have a feeling my days of driving your father's car are almost over." And Kelly is very suspicious of him wanting a big payout. She says, "You expect a big promotion?" And he says, "I'm expecting a great deal more than that."
Interesting.
So, we don't know. It's clear that there's a whole lot of misunderstanding happening here, but we're not quite clear exactly what Jeffrey expects either. So we will see. Lionel is planning a hot air ballooning trip over wine country with Carolyn. It's something he's always wanted to do. Gus is free and having breakfast with Alice at Johnny's. And I got a closer look at that bar, and it does appear to be red. So maybe that is just a weird angle of Johnny's that we've been seeing whenever we see the red bar. Mason arrives and asks Gus if he saw the apology in today's paper, which was sort of, below the fold on the front page. He tries to get Gus to shake his hand, but Gus says that Mason's honest mistake, as Mason had put it, almost cost 3 people their lives, referring, of course, to the hostage-taking. So, yeah, no apologies for Mason. And I realized while writing this up, this whole episode is kind of designed to pile more things up on Mason so he'll get depressed. And he is, of course, drunk already at this point, which we know is Mason's go-to thing when things are going terribly for him. Carolyn arrives, and when Alice goes to call Jane, she and Gus have a talk, and Gus is surprisingly chill in this episode. He is a different person. He says to Carolyn, well, there's no rush in you telling Alice you're her mother. He's totally fine with everything now that he's out. But I'm wondering if maybe he has a plan to, get full custody of Alice, and so he's happy to have Carolyn, spend her time not telling Alice anything.
Yeah, I wondered that too, if maybe he would be just as happy if Carolyn kind of drifted along as apparently she's done before and kind of left him with Alice.
We'll see. Maybe this is a new super chill Gus as opposed to easy to anger Gus that we've seen in the last few weeks. Gus goes for a job interview, doesn't get it. He's okay with that. But Brick comes from the back and hires him as a cook. And I'm thinking, if he had a cook job an hour ago when Gus was having breakfast there, why didn't he offer it to Gus then? I kind of am wondering if Brick just made up an unnecessary shift just to give Gus a break. Mason, as we said, is getting drunk at Johnny's, and he gives Victoria a call from the payphones. She comes to pick him up and takes him to her place for a Caesar salad. He says, if food be the music of love, cook on, amongst a whole lot of puns about Caesar and salad. He is about to kiss her when he loses his balance and ends up passing out on her couch. And we see her give him a little kiss on the cheek and cover him with a blanket. So as I suspected, Julia missed a window there by leaving yesterday when she heard Mason tell the bartender that he doesn't care for anyone. It was an error, and that may put their relationship on the back burner for months if Mason and Victoria suddenly pick up with each other. Hey, that's it for this episode. Piano furnished by Schaefer & Son. So now, is it a third piano? Is there one at Johnny's, one in the Capwell living room, and one in the back of a moving van? No other credits today. We had the crew credits, and I noticed Jill Farn Phelps is one of 3 producers, and I'm going to look into that a little bit because there's some behind-the-scenes storylines between the producers' credits. That will come to a much more exciting turn of events later in this year. So I will look up and get the dates right on this and start filling you in on some of these behind-the-scenes things that are happening on our beloved show. And that's it for today. Anything you want to add before we head into a cold and wet Vancouver November?
No, I was just trying to think if we'd seen any other Santa Barbara alumni on any of the shows we've been watching. But
we do see Charles Cipher a lot on things, but he hasn't appeared yet on the show. And we already talked about Henry Darrow, who we see quite often, who will be playing Cruz's dad someday. So. Okay, well, we'll be back for Thursday's show after we watch episode 637 of Santa Barbara. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
I was just calling to see what condition your condition was in.
Mason, have you been drinking?
I may have had a screwdriver or two, but I hardly looked at the others.
Well, why don't you come on over and I'll fix you some lunch?
Oh, no, I couldn't have you go to that trouble. Eating for 2 and cooking for 3.
Actually, I was just sort of throwing together a Caesar salad.
The noblest romaine of them all. Why, I'll be there in 2 shakes of a lamb's tail or 3 shakes of a cocktail, whichever comes first.
You know what you need? Some coffee.
Oh, no, thanks. It makes me jittery. I had some earlier, and it took numerous of spirituous libations to quell the effect.
Okay, I'm going to get you home.
I'm
There's a
going.
nice lunch waiting for you.
Hail Caesar salad!
Hey. What are you doing out here? Big surprise. What is this, the ghost of Christmas past or something?
I wanted to steal a minute alone with you, talk about Kelly. If you've considered the possibility that things might have changed.
I know Kelly. I don't understand. What are you driving at? What are you trying to say? That maybe she doesn't love me?
No, maybe I'm trying to, I don't know. I guess I'm not doing a good job of saying this.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We finished episode 637 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Thursday, January 29th, 1987. And on the Orient Express, Cruz and Eden help a middle-aged couple find love. This was quite an annoying little scene we were exposed to.
It was so sort of random because there was just this other couple on there, and we spent, it seemed like half the episode talking about them.
They then run into Raymond, who used to be a waiter on the Orient Express, and he remembers them from 5 years ago. So that would be like 1982-ish, I guess. So he remembers them because they were so much in love. But Cruz and Eden aren't the only ones on the Orient Express. In addition to Edward and Angela, Cruz notices that Pearl is staring at a photo of Kelly. And Eden finds the way he's talking about Kelly extremely creepy based on the look on her face. Cruz tells Eden that Pearl is in love with Kelly, but Eden is pretty sure Kelly doesn't feel the same way. Cruz tells Pearl that perhaps Kelly's time away has changed her feelings for Pearl. But Pearl gets angry with Cruz. Later, he tells Cruz and Eden that maybe he's been fooling himself, or that Kelly's met someone. They put a blanket on him so he can sleep. But after they leave him, he pulls out his picture of Kelly again.
She seems to have this effect on men.
She hasn't had anyone stalking her for a while. I feel like this is just how things started with Dylan and...
well, Peter
what's
was
his
already
name?
a
Peter.
bit deranged, but...
Well, we will see how things go with Pearl.
I was trying to think during this how much encouragement she had really given him, though, before she left.
Yeah, I mean, before she left, it was quite minimal because, I had my eye on it, obviously. Yeah, so they did say that they were well, they weren't really communicating, were they? Because he was keeping people away from her. So I don't know. He seems to think they've had this big thing. Pearl. There's always Courtney. Mason awakens in Victoria's apartment. Victoria spends the episode trying to tell him he's not as lousy as he thinks he is. But he runs into Julia with another man at Johnny's, and she says, I'm so glad I'm with this guy, not Mason Campwell. And then Cece arrives to remind him of what a failure he is and to admonish him for spending time with Victoria Lane, who tried to ruin his sister's life. Sophia does try to remind Cece that everything Mason did was for Kelly, and Cece says, his heart is in the right place. It's his brain I'm worried about. And he says that basically Mason has a pattern, and it usually ends with a big downhill slide, and that's what's happening right now.
Well, I would say Cece's given him a bit of a push in that downhill slide.
And Julia, too, unknowingly.
Yeah. And I would also point out that it's Cece's cockamamie plan that has gone south.
Wasn't it Mason's plan to begin with? I don't know. But he definitely was in on it.
I don't remember, actually.
Speaking of plans, Cece sets his plan in motion to trap Gina and Keith. Step 1, he cancels all of Gina's credit cards. She immediately feels the pinch. We meet Alex, Cece's accountant, who said, you spent $34,000 in December. And she says, it's Christmas! Everyone spends money at Christmas. But Alex is there for a reason. He is installing a computer into Cece's study so that Cece can instantly access his bank accounts, and all he needs is the passphrase. Gina wonders what the passphrase might be, and Alex says, "Oh no, that's a secret only Cece and I know. Empires have fallen with people who leaked their passphrase." So when Alex leaves, Gina calls Keith over, and they immediately spend the rest of the episode trying to guess Cece's passphrase, little knowing that Cece has had Alex install the mastermind computer in the guest house, and they are watching Gina and Keith's every move in hopes of trapping them. After what seems like a long time, it finally dawns on Gina to try guessing Sophia as the passphrase, which it turns out to be. And Sophia is gleeful when she sees that Gina and Keith transfer $20,000 out of Cece's account and into Gina's. Now, Sophia wants to call the police immediately, saying this is grand larceny, but Cece says, no, we need to let them dig themselves in the hole, spend some of that money so they can't just return it and say it was an honest mistake, leave it in Gina's account for a long time to make it clear that she's intending to steal it. So we'll see how much more Keith and Gina manage to steal in the coming days. Mm-hmm. And that is it for the episode. We spent a long time on the Orient Express, and it wasn't as fun as I thought a trip on the Orient Express might be.
We did, however, have a sighting recently.
I was trying to think, and I couldn't remember who we saw.
It was a CC sighting, not our current CC, but it was Paul Burke, and a very, very young Paul Burke. And he was playing a thug in an old episode of Superman.
Yes, I forget what we were watching, and we were waiting to do something, and so we put on Meet TV to while away a bit of time and watched the end of one Superman and then the whole of another one that Paul Burke was in. We had the crew credits in this episode, and the piano was once again furnished by Schaefer and Sons. So that Orient Express had the dining car, which I think was also the dancing car. We had Cruz and Eden's car, which had seats for two, but Pearl was also seated there. But then later there was a bed. Then again, Eden did have a flashback or fantasy about the previous time she and Cruz were on the Orient Express. So I'm not entirely clear if that bed was real or not. But then we saw also Angela and Edward's cabin at one point. So I feel like that's why we're getting such close-ups of the bar at Johnny's. And when we see it, if we do, very extreme close-ups of the bar at the Orient Express, because the real Orient Express is probably where they have set up the real Orient Express. The train Orient Express is probably set up where the Orient Express restaurant is on their soundstage, and I'm wondering if they've just painted over the brown finishings in the restaurant set to make the train set. I don't know. Someone will have to write a book about Santa Barbara someday and tell us exactly how that soundstage looked. But anyway, that's my theory. As long as we have that train requirement for the train set, we might not be seeing much of Johnny's or much of the Orient Express. I mean, really now they've got one round table set up right in front of the bar, and then I think Mason and Victoria were sitting at it, and then there was one Cece and Sophia were sitting at, which was, crammed in nearby. They may even be using the same one from a different angle. That's how close in they've been shooting that set. So, all right, we'll be back to finish off this week, 131, and finish off January. It'll be the January 30th episode. Wow, the year's already a 12th over. We'll be back when we've seen episode 638 of Santa Barbara. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
I wish I had a lot of buckshot at Minx Lockridge's old shotgun with me, I'll tell you that.
Why?
Timmins, damn him, he's got a bunch of spies surrounding this house.
Welcome to episode 638 of Misha Dianne Watch Santa Barbara. We're at the Jinx Speakeasy at the Hotel Vancouver. We thought we would just get a little background for my intro. We watched episode 638, which originally aired January 30th, 1987. Cece complains to Sophia that Keith has surrounded the Capwell mansion with police, so even if Kelly and Jeffrey do make it back to Santa Barbara, they'll have no way to get back into the mansion. I was wondering what they could be hiding in the boathouse again. Or February. Might be a bit chilly to hide in a boathouse. Here's the yacht. Could live on that. The stables. Victoria shows up to tell off Cece for how he's treating Mason. Cece investigates Victoria and finds out that she's taking a year off acting, which Sophia, as a former actress, sounds like a great way to kill a career. So she strolls on over to visit Victoria to demand to know why she's taking a year off. Now, I actually thought Sophia was going to spot the shopping bag full of baby clothes that Victoria was just looking at when the doorbell rang, but I don't think she did.
I was a bit puzzled by all this because I thought the financial ruin of Victoria Lane maybe have been in the press a little bit more, so they might have understood at least that she was in difficult circumstances. Yeah, and it just seems weird they're coming at it from a standpoint of, they're worried she's back to take Cruz from Eden, but I feel like, all their delving is going to do the opposite and reveal that she's pregnant, Yeah, it's this part of the storylines kind of seemed a bit off to me, and I have to say Sophia didn't come across very sympathetically for me in this episode. I did have a weird idea, though. Cece calls back his investigator and demands he delve further into why Victoria is taking the year off. This is an odd thought. What if they find out she's pregnant, and in order to get Mason back in his good graces, he tells Mason, "You pretend it's your baby so that Eden won't have to worry about Cruz going back to Victoria." I mean, that would be a convoluted thing, but it's just a kind of wacky thing that, deal that Cece might make with Mason to not stop de-inheriting him or whatever. I don't know. Yeah. It's good. It's also one of the sort of rare times, I would say, that Victoria actually is coming across as the sympathetic character. If you think about how unsympathetic she was, especially when she was trying to trap Cruz and all of that, and now, it's a little bit of a tonal difference when it comes to the Victoria character. I wonder if Mason will claim it's his baby just to shut them down, something like especially
that. Especially
if he thinks he has no chance with Julia.
Yeah, because they were left out in a bad place, so. Pearl tries to figure out how to give Cruz and Eden some alone time in their shared cabin on the Orient Express for their 4-hour and 4-minute trip to Paris. Cruz goes, "I wish you'd gotten plane tickets," at one point. He pretends to be sick so that they have to sleep in the dining car, which looks very uncomfortable, and then gets the porter to have the chef prepare them a special dinner. Like, it's late at night, based on the, the lighting, and gets the champagne all ready and dressed the thing up, and tries to find some coxcombs and bribes the porter into breaking into some dried flowers that are being shipped. Anyway, Cruz and Eden get roused. They're in a lot of pain from the awkward angles they've been sleeping at, and when they return to see why Pearl has summoned them, they find that he's set up this evening for them. So presumably in the next episode, with the remaining seconds of this trip to Paris, they'll have a nice evening while they're in agony from being forced to sleep on a bench. Yeah, I remember this is, a 4-hour trip, basically. Yeah. I'm wondering if that first episode where the train seemed to be going slowly, I wonder if the implication was there was a slowdown for, some unknown reason, and that slowed the whole journey down. But it might have been wise to reiterate that a few times. You do remember the first time they were on the Orient Express, there was this issue where the train broke down, and that's why they wandered out into the fields and picked those coxcombs originally. So maybe it's it's got a bad habit of breaking down since it's not even supposed to go to Zurich. Lionel asks Carolyn to move in with him, and she says she's got a few things to sort out first. He's kind of depressed by that response. I guess you're over Mom, says Warren. Lionel and him have a talk about how Lionel used to leave all the time when he was a kid too, and Lionel says, yeah, but the difference was I knew when I was coming back. I don't know that your mom's ever coming back. Okay, it's a little slightly convoluted, but... Kelly and Jeffrey play cards and complain and flirt on their trip through the states. They find a radio and learn they are passing through Flagstaff, and then Kelly has a nightmare about Dylan. And just as Jeffrey awakens her, the truck stops, and they don't have time to hide before the doors are flung open, and the truck driver says, "What are you doing here?"
I thought it was kind of funny throughout this. We see Kelly still in her little moving outfit.
Yeah, with the hat on to
With
cover
the
her
hat.
hair.
So I'm almost wondering if maybe that will be used to get them out of this situation they're currently in.
I thought maybe she doesn't want to turn him on too much with her hair. So.
Well, that might be it.
Or she's teasing him with that eventual reveal. I don't know. I think she's having a good... the only thing that seems to annoy her is the fact that she thinks he's angling for a big payoff with Cece, which has been, phrased in such a way that we're not sure if Cece has promised Jeffrey some other thing, and Kelly's misinterpreting it as a pile of cash. Well, a fairly straightforward Friday episode, very easy to summarize, and maybe this was originally written as a Friday or not. Don't know. We'll see if Monday has a cliffhanger. We'll know. But that was actually a bit of a cliffhanger with Kelly and Jeffrey being discovered. And that's it for week 131. We'll be back next week for week 132 and episode 639.
We dangerous criminals have to live by our wits, don't we?